All right, Rabbi say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin a good tavach. Hopefully, everyone had a beautiful and restful Shabbos. A great zechus, Baruch Hashem, to begin another week of learning together. Start with all of the TALMUD TORAH sponsorships. TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Kislev, Joshua Becca Friedman, in commemoration to the yahrzeit of Josh's father, Yisroel Yehuda ben HaRav Chaim Rephael, for an aliyah for all of those who were murdered al Kiddush Hashem on Simchas Torah of this year in Eretz Yisrael, and for a safe return of all of our chayalim and our hostages. Semi and Malka Esterson, in the memory of their parents, Hinda bas Henoch Ephraim, Yitzchak Leib ben Aaron HaKohen, and Sarah Rachel bas Baruch Avram. The Pepper family, in memory of their brother and uncle, Yosef Pepper, Yosef David ben Yaakov Zichron Livracha, and our week of learning sponsors, Doug and Gail Stanger, in memory of Doug's father, Shraga Feivel ben Moshe Aaron Halevi. And again, if we dedicate as a shir, Le'ili Nishmas, Master Sergeant Eliyahu Michal Harush, we hope that the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, all of the Neshamas will have an aliyah, the families in Neshama, and of course a thank you as well to Yoni Frager for sponsoring the pastries today. Right? Am I correct in that? Good. Sponsoring the pastries today in honor of his birthday, and tremendous. This is the never-ending birthday. It's Yoni's jubilee year, Baruch Hashem. So Yoni Shkachi. Truth is, Yoni, you can never get too many brachas. You never get too many brachas in life. So if you're the guy who, to every time somebody sees you, they wish you a happy birthday, that's fantastic. I'm the Kani. Or I was going to say, every time they wish you happy birthday, make another donation to the shul. That's what I think that might be. Jeremy will swipe your card. He's sitting right in front of you. He'll say, oh, good. Halavai, Mirz Hashem. Every day should be your birthday. Every day should be with Hatzlacha and Mazla, Me'eva Esim Shanim Tovos. All right, so with that, let us begin. So we have an incredible daf today. Today's daf is Lamed Aleph. We are picking up, Baruch Hashem, at the Mishnah on Lamed Aleph, Amud Aleph. Mishnah says, Shnei Kadarim. So we'll say, so again, we have an interesting case over here. 31a at the Mishnah. So Shnei Kadarin Shalim Machalkin Zachazeh. Two people, potters. Literally, right, a kedera is a pot. So two people holding earthenware vessels, call them potters, are walking one after the other. Now we'll say, this is in Rosh Hashanah, public domain. Just a regular Sunday. Two potters walking one in front of the other, Reuven and Shimon. What happens? So the Gemara says, V'niskal Rishon v'nafel. So now here's where it gets interesting. So Reuven, the first guy, trips, falls down, and then as a result, V'niskal Hasheni b'Rishon. And then again, Shimon, the second potter, ends up tripping over Reuven. So what's the halacha? Harishon chayiv b'niske Hasheni. Ultimately, again, the first guy, Reuven, is chayiv for any damages done to Shimon. The Rabbi say, now this is interesting. So again, this both you just understand, this is going to have major ramifications, right? You could just you could replace potters with what? Drivers. Right? Replace potters with drivers, and we're going to run into the same exact scenario. So again, Reuven, Shimon, Reuven in front, Shimon behind him, Reuven trips, ultimately falls, Shimon trips over Reuven, Mishnah Paskins, Reuven is chayiv for all damages done to Shimon. Alright, so let's analyze this. It says the Gemara, Am Rabbi Yochanan. Lo tema mastis Rabbi Meir he. Shabbos say so. First wide line. Now remember, at first glance, you say to yourself, "Oh, 1 second. We've actually had this discussion already. What is this discussion?" Rabbi say we had this. We had it last week. What was the discussion? Niskal poshea is someone who trips considered to be negligent. Right? So bepashtos. That's what this seems to be. Gemara says at first. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, not necessarily. Lo tema mastis Rabbi Meir he. This does not have to necessarily reflect the view of Rabbi Meir. There are niskal poshea who holds that one who trips ultimately again is negligent. The chayiv. So obviously Rabbi Meir would agree with this Mishnah. Right? So Rabbi Meir who holds niskal poshea, that one who trips is considered to be negligent. Obviously the Mishnah makes sense. So therefore when Reuven trips and ultimately falls down, tripping is negligence, and therefore when Shimon trips over Reuven will of course be chayiv for any damages. Fine. The Rabbi Yochanan takes this a step further. Elafilu Rabbanan. Even according to the Rabbanan, the Amri Anasu Pater, watch this. Even according to the Rabbanan, who normally say that in the case of tripping, ultimately Niskal is Anus, tripping is an Ones. Never Upater, and therefore I will say in general halacha l'maisa, when you trip and fall, if someone else trips over you, technically speaking, you could be Pater. So what's happening over here? Hacha chayiv. Why? Shahayelo la'amod v'lo amad. Because we'll say, what happened over here? Reuven tripped. The act of tripping, ultimately, again, is not negligence. The act of tripping could be ones. So if it's ones, if it's extenuating circumstances, then why is Reuven chayiv for subsequent damages when Shimon trips over him? And the answer is, Reuven had the opportunity to stand up. Shahaya lo la'amod v'lo amad. He should have stood up, and ultimately, again, he did not. I will say, just pause here for just a second. And let this swirl around your neshama a little bit. What an overwhelming and incredible yisod. Sometimes niskal on us. Sometimes Rabbi say we trip in life, and we fall down. Talking about on a spiritual level. And I will say sometimes it could even be an ones. There are times in life where ultimately, again, I trip spiritually, I fall down spiritually, and the truth is, it's not because I did something premeditated, it's not because I gave in to my taivas, it's sometimes circumstances happen in life that throw me down to the ground. So now I'm down and out. I didn't do it, I didn't put myself there, but circumstantially, this is where I am. There may not be liability for falling down, but I will say, but there absolutely is liability for staying down. No liability. Now again, I want to be clear. Sometimes in life there is liability for falling down because I made myself fall. I created those circumstances. But sometimes, we know that there are situations in life where I trip, I fall, not because of any negligence, not because of any pshia, but simply because of an ones. There may not be liability for falling down, but there's absolute liability for staying down. Because in Yiddishkeit, the mantra is, you fall, Sheva Yipol Tzadik Vakam. The tzaddik, even the tzaddik falls down. And the tzaddik falls down multiple times. But what makes the tzaddik the tzaddik? So I say people may have this mistake. People think that the greatness of the tzaddik is that he never falls. Shalom Melech says, Ein tzaddik bar tzaddik yechta. The most righteous person sins. Everyone sins. So what makes the tzaddik? Whereas most people, once they fall down, stay down. Sheva Yipol Tzadik V'kam. The tzaddik gets back up. That's what makes a tzaddik a tzaddik. Tzaddik is a person who, after he fails, finds the courage to get back up. So the Gemara says, you fall down, that might be an ones. Shahaya lo la'amod v'lo amad. So where is their liability? When you could have gotten up, but you did not get up. In the aftermath of life failure, Abba said, we have one simple mandate. Get back up. Failure to get back up, that's what creates liability. Incredible. I will say, it's like 5 minutes in this year and it's Sunday, and these are the life lessons. Can you imagine the week we're going to have? Incredible. So I'll say, as Rabbi Yochanan. So I'll say, Rabbi Yochanan wants to understand the Mishnah as follows. Rabbi Yochanan wants to understand the Mishnah like this. Reuven and Shimon are walking. Reuven's walking first, Shimon's walking behind him. Ultimately, Reuven falls down. Now again, Rabbi Yochanan says, even according to the Rabbanan, who hold that niskal is ones. So tripping and falling down is extenuating circumstance. So then why is Reuven liable when Shimon subsequently trips over him and is injured? Because Reuven should have gotten up. Reuven hayalo lamod v'lo amar. He had the ability to get back up. He didn't get up. Therefore, when Shimon subsequently trips over him, he's going to be chayiv for damages. Next, Rav Nachman says, afilu tema lo hayalo lamod. Nachman takes it a step further. Even if Reuven couldn't have gotten back up, there's still liability for Reuven. Why? Listen to this. Haya lo lahas here, v'lo his here. I will say, what should he have done? When Reuven fell down, what should he have done? He should have gone ahead and warned Shimon behind him, right? I've fallen and I can't get up, right? And he wasn't wearing his medical alert bracelet, right? So Lamaisa, again, even if Reuven couldn't get up, so Lamaisa, again, he had an obligation. What's interesting? You know how you see this? And I don't know why we don't have this in America. You know how in Eretz Yisrael, that when your car breaks down, you pull over to the side, right? If you put on a reflective vest, right? It's such a good chap. I don't know why in America we don't have that. Like every car should just have a reflective vest, a little flare thing over there, right? And that way, again, you warn people, right? It's a dangerous thing sometimes. You see people, right? You're driving on the highway, and again, people are pulled over to the side, and the truth is, especially if it's dark at night, lav dafka that you see anything. So Reb Nachman bar Yitzchak says over here something amazing. He says, Reuven, even if you can't get up, you could call out a warning. I will say, it's actually interesting, by the way. What do you also see from here? what you see from here is that halacha l'maisa, even with pedestrian traffic in Rosh Hashanah, you're still obligated. I remember from your driver's ed days that you're supposed to maintain a certain car length, right, in between, I don't know how many it is, right? One car length, right? Per 10 miles. Yeah, no one listens to that. Right, but myself again. Okay, fine. But the point is the idea, one car length per 10 miles?
Per hour, per 10 miles per hour.
You'll never get anywhere. All right, whatever. Okay, whatever it is. Right, the point is the chachma of it is there, right? The idea being that you can't be tailgating someone because if something happens to them, then again you have no. So it's actually interesting. So from Rav Nachman's statement, this appears to be true even with pedestrian traffic in Rosh Hashanah. That because we'll say Rav Nachman is saying is even if Reuven can't get up, Reuven could call out a warning. Now, obviously, a warning presupposes that what? That Shimon has time to react, which presupposes that Shimon, is not right on the tail, so to speak, of Reuven. So interesting. Again, so we'll say that's Rabbi Yitzchak's idea. So two different opinions. We'll say, so therefore, Rabbi Yochanan telling us that halacha l'maisa. We'll say, now to be clear, if you're going like Reb Meir, then niskal posheya, that tripping is negligent, then the Mishnah doesn't really require any further explanation. Right? Reuven trips, that's negligence. The moment that Shimon trips over him and is damaged, ultimately, of course, Reuven is going to be chayiv. What's interesting is, both Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yitzchak are trying to align the Mishnah even with the Rabbanon. See, even the Rabbanon who hold that niskal lav posheya, that ultimately tripping is not negligent, they will still hold that ultimately Reuven is chayiv. Why? Why? Because the Maaseh again, according to Rabbi Yitzchak, Reuven had the ability to get up, but he didn't. Or according to Rabbi Nachman, that was Rabbi Yochanan. According to Rabbi Yitzchak, Reuven could have called out a warning, and his failure to do so ultimately results in liability. Incredible. So let's analyze this a little bit. Tnan, Haya Bal Korah Rishon, Obal Chavos Achron. Suppose another case, another Mishnah. We'll see this. We'll see this on the days. Right, it's good. Haya Bal Korah Rishon, Obal Chavos Achron. So we'll say, imagine the following case. Same case, Reuven and Shimon walking behind each other. Reuven is holding a beam. He's walking first. Shimon is holding a barrel behind him. So what's talacha? Bal Chavos Achron. Nishpara Chavos Bekora Pater. So we'll say, so now the case over here is, let's say, Reuven's beam smashes Shimon's barrel. So what's talacha? Pater. So we'll say, because the assumption is what's happened over here, that Shimon is tailgating. Right? Shimon is tailgating a little bit, so if you're tailgating, you are responsible. Vim amad bal korah chayiv. But if Reuven, who's holding the beam, if Reuven just stops in Rosh Hashanah, and then Shimon smashes into him and breaks the barrel, then ultimately again Reuven will be chayiv. Okay, so now let's pick apart this case. My love sha'amad the kasef the archeu. Now we'll say, why did Reuven stop? So if Reuven stopped to adjust the beam on his shoulder, the kasef, so we'll say, that's normal. That's normal. In other words, we'll say, it is common that people stop for a couple of moments in Rosh Hashanah to adjust their load. That's why you can't tailgate. Right? You have to go ahead and you have to give room. So if we're talking about a case where Reuven stopped to adjust the beam, that's ultimately, again, right? Kisham lafosh. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Kisham lafosh, I will say, means when Reuven stopped to rest. So I will say, let me just say this outside for just a second. It is normal to stop for a moment to adjust your load. It is not normal to stop to rest. Now let's say, I'll give you a simple example. Like when you're driving, so it may be normal to slow down. What's not normal is to say, I'm so tired, let me just stop in the middle lane, right, for a couple of moments to rest. So I'll say, so therefore again, it's the same yisod over here. To stop for a moment to adjust your load in Rosh Hashanah, that's normal. To stop to rest, abnormal. So watch this. So kisha'amad lafosh. So what's the case where if Reuven stops, Reuven is going to be chayiv? That's where he stopped to rest. He stops to rest, Shimon slams into him. Ultimately, again, there's liability for Reuven. Aval amad l'kasef. What happens if Reuven stopped to adjust his load, which Rabbi say is normal stoppage? What's talacha? Pater. Ultimately, Reuven will be pater. Why? Because Rabbi say that's normal. And remember, Shimon, who's walking behind Reuven, has to take into account that there may be a moment where Reuven stops to adjust his load, and therefore Shimon has to be careful not to slam into him. To which the Gemara says, if that's the case, Adatani Seifa. Now also look at the end of that Mishnah. What does the Mishnah say? Adatani Seifa. So we'll say ultimately again, if Reuven called out to Shimon, stop. So Potter, ultimately Reuven is going to be Potter for any subsequent damages. Well, if that's the case, liflog v'lisnei b'didei. Why not make a simpler distinction? So ultimately again, when do we say that Reuven is chayiv if Shimon's barrel breaks against Reuven's beam? Sha'omed lafush, when Reuven stopped to rest. Aval amud l'kasef, Potter. But if Reuven stopped for a moment to adjust his load, then ultimately again it'll be Potter. So why not just make that distinction? To which the Gemara says, you're right. Hakamash malan da'af agav da'amud lafush. Listen to this, because the Mishnah is going to introduce something additional to me. What's the chiddush? The chiddush is that if Reuven stopped to rest, which Rabbi say again, normally, if you stop to rest, what's the halacha? You, the rester, are chayiv for any damages, because that's abnormal. But listen to this. In the case where Reuven did stop to rest, ki ka'amr lo labala chavis amud pater. Wow. Now let's say, watch this. What we're coming to be taught is the following. That even though normally if you stop to rest and there's subsequent damages, there's going to be liability. But I will say, if Reuven stopped to rest, but he called out to Shimon, stop, I'm resting for a few moments, and Shimon keeps going and there's liability, Reuven is pater. So we'll say, isn't that interesting? So there's two cases over here. So case number one is if Reuven stops to adjust the load and Shimon slams into him, Reuven is pater. Why? Because that's on Shimon. Shimon's got to know that ultimately, again, Reuven is going to be stopping at times to go ahead and adjust the load. That's case one. Case two is even if Reuven stops to rest, under normal circumstances, there'd be liability if Shimon slams into him. But if Reuven calls out and Reuven says, stop, gives Shimon enough notice to say, I've stopped over here, like essentially puts on his hazards, right? Puts on his hazards and calls out and says, stop, and Shimon still keeps coming, Reuven is pater. Incredible. Tashma was another case. Hakadarin v'hazagogin. Shema halchin zechus. That's supposed to say, so kadarin are people with earthenware utensils, zagogin are people with glass utensils. So these people are walking with sarabim. Mahalchin zechus. So we'll say, same case. Reuven is walking in front, Shimon behind him. They're both carrying earthenware vessels. Or for that matter, they're both carrying glass vessels. So what's the halacha? Niskal harishon v'nafel. Reuven trips and he falls. V'niskal hasheni berishon. And then Shimon trips and falls on Reuven. Oh, now watch this. We'll say v'niskal hasheni berishon. So we'll say now it gets better. V'hashlishi b'sheni. And then I will say, what happens? Guess who's joining the party? Right? Levi. Right? Levi's joining the party also, and Levi trips over Shimon. So pile up. Let's say pile up. Right? Reuven. So again, Reuven goes ahead and trips. Right? Falls. Shimon trips over Reuven, and Levi trips over Shimon. Okay. What's going on? We'll say, here we go. Reuven chayiv b'niskei sheni. Rishon chayiv b'niskei sheni. So we'll say, so Reuven is going to be chayiv ultimately for damages done to Shimon. Okay, v'sheni chayiv b'niskei shlishi. And Shimon is going to be chayiv ultimately again for damages done to Levi. So one is chayiv for two is chayiv for three. Okay, well let's analyze this. However, v'machmas rishon naflu. So we'll say, but however, if it's clear that this entire event, right, this entire pileup was caused by Reuven, then what? Then Rishon Chaim Beniske Kulam. Then Reuven's Chayiv everything. Interesting. Fine. So then he's Hiruzazah, but I will say, if each of them warned the one behind him. So Reuven warned Shimon. Shimon warned Levi, but yet they still tripped over each other. P'turim. That means that one is pater for damages to two is pater for damages to three. Okay, so we'll say, so now, all right, let's unpack this. My love, shelo haya lahen la'amod. My love, shelo haya lahen la'amod. That will say, are we not talking about a case where Reuven fell down and there wasn't a chance for him to get up? And so too, when Shimon fell down, Reuven fell down, and there wasn't the opportunity to get up before Shimon tripped over him. And similarly, Shimon fell down, and there was an opportunity for him to get up before Levi fell over him. The Gemara says, "Lo, shahayalahan la'amod." No, the case over here is Rabbi say, where when each of them fall down, they had the ability to get back up. Avalo hayalahem la'amod. But Rabbi say, if they would have fallen down but not had the chance to get up, what would be the halacha? Mai pater. They'd be pater. Because Rabbi say, then that would be a complete case of onus. Remember again, Rabbi say, we're going with the idea that not like Rabbi Meir, like the Rabbanon, that niskal is lav posheya. right? That ultimately, again, that falling down is not negligence. And therefore, Abba said, the Gemara is suggesting over here, they were talking about a case where Allah said each of them could have gotten up. I'm sorry, Shaylahem Lamot. So Abba said, but in a case where they could not have gotten up, then there would be no liability. There'd be no liability. If that's the case, Ihachi, Adetani Seifa, then let's look at the Seifa. If they warned each other, as Reuven warned Shimon warned Levi, then Potter. Then ultimately, again, I will say there'd be Potter. If that's the case, why do you even have to introduce that? Lift no v'lisnei b'didei. Instead, I will say make the following distinction. When is their liability 1 for 2 and 2 for 3? Shahaya lahen la'amod. When they had the ability to get up, but failed to do so. Ava lo haya lahen la'amod. But if one didn't have the ability to get up before 2 tripped over him, and 2 didn't have the ability to get up before 3 tripped over him, then what? So the Gemara says, P'turin, ultimately, Pater. So why not just state the case like that? Hakamash malon, da'af agav da'haya lahen la'amod, ki yesiru ze'et ze P'turin. Because Rabbi say we're trying to introduce a new halacha. That even in the case, Rabbi say, where what? Even in a case where the person who fall could have gotten up, if he didn't get up, but he still gives a warning, that also exempts him from liability. So Rabbi said this is very important. So again, Reuven falls down, right? And now remember again, Reuven has the ability to get up. So in a general sense, we would say that if Reuven falls down, which is not act of negligence, it's shogeg, right? Or ones. Reuven falls down, he has the ability to get up. So generally we would say if Reuven doesn't get up and Shimon falls over him and gets injured, what's the halacha? Chayav. Because Reuven. Now we'll say, however, if Reuven didn't get up, but Reuven did call out the warning, that warning absolves him of future liability. That's what we're trying to introduce over here. So I'll say, so calling out the warning essentially is effectively the same thing as getting back up. So therefore, even if Shimon doesn't heed the warning and Shimon falls, Reuven is still pater. Incredible. So we'll say, let's analyze a bit more. Amar Rava. So we'll say, let's go back to the case of the 3 people, right? So Reuven falls, then ultimately again Shimon falls over him. Then ultimately again, obviously Shimon fell, and now Levi trips or Levi falls over Shimon. So we'll say, so what did the Mishnah say? What did the Brisa say? The Brisa said, right, 1 is chayiv for 2, 2 is chayiv for 3. So what's the halacha? So now let's analyze. Amar Rava, Rishon chayiv beniske sheni bein beniske gufo, bein beniske mamono. So we'll say, the way we're going to translate this phrase for now is as follows. We're going to reframe it in just a little bit. But when we say the first Reuven, right, when we say guy number 1 is liable, what is he liable for? He's liable, I will say, for damages he performed, damages caused by his body, and damages caused by his property. Now, as well say, watch this. Reuven is walking, and Reuven is holding a package, a bundle. So now Reuven falls, trips, and now Shimon trips over Reuven. So there are 2 different ways that Shimon can be damaged by Reuven. Either A, Shimon trips over Reuven himself, in which case it's Reuven's body that's damaging Shimon, or the other possibility is Shimon trips over Reuven's Masa, his package. So Rava says over here, Reuven is going to be liable whether he damages Reuven with his body, with Reuven's body, or with Reuven's property. Okay? So the Gemara says, Sheni chayiv beniske shlishi beniske gufo. Ooh, watch this. Shimon, however, is only going to be chayiv to damages for Levi for what? If Levi trips over Shimon's person, trips over his body. But if Levi trips over Shimon's package, then Shimon will not be chayiv. Why not? I will say why not. Now remember again, I will say in general, what is the package considered in halacha? What is the package considered? Bar. Now watch this. So essentially what we're saying is like this. When Reuven trips and falls, so if Shimon is injured either by tripping over Reuven's body or by Reuven's property, Reuven's guf or his bar, so Reuven's going to be chayiv. When Levi falls over Shimon, so if Levi is injured by Shimon's body, trips over Shimon's body, Shimon will be chayiv. But if Levi trips over Shimon's package, his bar, Shimon will not be chayiv. Right? Now why not? Now watch this. Mimarav shach. So the Gemara says, if you hold that tripping is negligent, So Shemi Nami L'chayiv. I don't understand that the second one should also be chayiv. Levi should also be chayiv. Inis kala poshea. And if tripping is not poshea, afila rishon nami li pater. Then ultimately even Reuven should be pater. So I'll say, so what's going on over here? So the Gemara says rishon vaday posheahu. So I'll say the way we're looking at this now is rishon Reuven is definitely a poshea. The Gemara is going with the idea niskal is poshea. Tripping ultimately again is negligent. So we'll say, now watch this. So Rishon Poshehu, alright, fine. Sheni, listen to this, we'll say. Agufo Mechayiv, Dahabilela Amod Velo Amad. So we'll say, listen to this. So watch, let's just play this out. Reuven, right, we'll say, in this case, everybody's walking with a package. So Reuven trips and falls down. So we'll say, so first of all, number one, the Gemara is saying, we're treating Niskal like Poshea. We're treating tripping like negligence. So therefore, we'll say, Reuven falls down. Now we'll say, now remember, therefore, Reuven has created two obstacles, right? One, his guf, his body, that will become niske gufo, and he also created what? A bar. He's created a bar. His package is now a bar. So now we'll say, now watch this. Now Shimon trips over that. Now whether Shimon trips over Reuven's body or Shimon trips over Reuven's package, there's still going to be liability for Reuven. Fine. Now we'll say, now what about Shimon? Now we'll say, now Shimon's down and out, right? Shimon's lying on the ground. And so is his package. Sheni, now we'll say now, Levi trips over Shimon. So watch this. Sheni agufo mechayiv, dahavele la'amod v'lo amad. So we'll say 31b, second line. So we'll say, so Levi's going to be chayiv, Shimon's going to be chayiv if Levi trips over him. Why? Because Shimon should have what? Gotten back up. However, a mamono pater, but Shimon will be pater if Levi trips over his package. Why? Haibira lav ana karise. Incredible. Shimon says, Levi, if you trip over my package, I'm so sorry, but I'm not liable for that. It's not my bar. Why is it not my bar? I didn't create it. Who created the bar? Reuven. So incredible, right? So in other words, so when Levi, guy number 3, trips over Shimon, guy number 2, so if he trips over Shimon's body, then ultimately, again, Shimon will be liable. Right? Shimon will be liable. Why? Ultimately, Shimon should have gotten back up. But if Levi, guy number 3, trips over Shimon, guy number 2's package, his bar, Shimon can say, there's no liability. I didn't create that bar. I didn't create that. The bar was actually created by Reuven. And because I didn't create the bar, I shouldn't be chayav, I shouldn't be liable for damages committed by a bar that I did not create. Great case. So let's analyze this. Kulan chayavin on this gufan. Here's the follow-up side. There's another follow-up brisa, seemingly on the same case. So just to understand how this has happened over here, right? So before we go on to this, so remember again, when Reuven falls, so we're going with the idea over here that niskal poshea, that ultimately again tripping is considered to be an act of negligence, and therefore halacha l'maisa, Reuven is going to be chayiv if Shimon trips over his body or Shimon trips over his package. His body, that's niske gufo. His package is bar. But when Shimon falls down, so now, again, Shimon should have gotten back up. If Levi now goes ahead and trips over Shimon himself, then Shimon will be liable for damages done through his body to Levi. But if Levi trips over Shimon's package, then ultimately, again, in that case, the Shimon will not be chayiv. Why? Because halacha l'maisa, that's bar, and Shimon didn't create that bar. Okay, so now, meisvei, Rezi kasha, kulan chayavin on this gufan, upetur on this mamonan. So here's the problem. Follow up on that Mishnah. Follow up on that price on that previous case. What does it say? It says ultimately again all of these cases. Now I'll say all of these cases is Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. I mean, there's no liability for Levi, but Reuven and Shimon, kulan chayavin on this gufan. All of them are liable for damages that they caused with their body. Upetur on this mamonan, but they are pater for any damages caused by their property, by their bar. My love, afilu rishon. Rabbi say, does this not say that even Reuven is only chayiv if Shimon is damaged by tripping over his body? But Reuven is not going to be chayiv ultimately again if Shimon trips over his package, niske bar, lo, lebar mirishon. No. What it means is except for Reuven. Reuven, Rabbi says, is going to be the guy who's going to be chayiv both for damages done through his body and through his package. But any subsequent people in the pile-up, ultimately again will only be responsible for damages caused by their body, but not damages caused by their package. See, Marcy, 1 second. That's not what it says. It says kulam. It says everyone. We'll say everyone usually means everyone. Amrav Adavar Ava, kulan hanizakim. It means, Rabbi say, all of the people who are damaged. And then Rabbi say, Reuven is not damaged over here, right? Reuven is a damager. So what it means is any of the subsequent victims of the pileup. So it's Shimon, it's Levi, and as long as the list goes growing, but not Reuven. Reuven is the one person in this whole mix who will be chayiv both for damages done through his body as well as through his property. So the Gemara says, Hi Mai. So what does this mean? If you say that ultimately, again, the Seif is coming to exclude even Reuven from damages of the bar, Hainu diktani kulan, then kulan makes sense. Eli amrit lebar mirishon, my kulan. I don't understand, but I said we're hung up on the word kulan. It says kulan, everyone involved in this is only chayiv for damages done by their body, but not for damages done by their property. So kulan means everyone, which includes Reuven. And if it doesn't mean Reuven, lisni hanizakim, then instead of saying kulan, just say what? All of those who are damaged. All those who are damaged. Ela amarava rishon chayiv bein beniske gufo desheni bein beniske mamona desheni. We'll say here we go. Rather, you have to say like this: Reuven will say is going to be chayiv ultimately again for all damages. All damages, right? Whether damages caused by his body or damages caused by his property. V'sheni chayiv beniske shlishi beniske gufo avalo beniske mamono. So we'll say ultimately again. Halacha l'maisa, watch this. So now, number 2, Shimon will be chayiv for any bodily damages caused ultimately again to Levi, but ultimately again not for any damage to property of Levi. My taima. Then I will say, now why is that? The havile bar. Because remember again, I will say, because at most, we'll say now we're switching it around a little bit over here. Now what we're switching it to, I will say, is when Reuven falls down, any subsequent damages that Reuven does to Shimon, Reuven will be chayiv whether he damages Shimon's person or Shimon's property. Now, however, when Shimon falls down, Shimon will be responsible for any bodily damage caused to Levi, but will not be chayiv for any type of monetary damage caused to Levi. Why not? My timer, the havile bar, because ultimately, because Shimon and his property become a bar. And we'll say, we remember again, one of the halachos, interesting halachos of bar is only chayiv for. So let me say differently. Bar is not chayiv for kalim, right? If my bar damages someone's utensils, there's no liability for that. So therefore, again, what Gemara is now suggesting is that when Shimon falls down, he has the status of bar. It was part of the status of bar, and therefore, again, when Levi is damaged, any damage done to Levi's body, Shimon will be chayiv for. But any damage done to Levi's property, Shimon will not be chayiv for, because there's no liability for kalim through bar damage. Hani Chala Shmuel. So that's fine according to Shmuel. The Amar called Takala Baru. Shmuel says about say any obstacle has the status of bar. El Rav do Amar Iafgrei in ilo lo ma'ikila neimar. So I will say here's the problem. According to Rav, the only definition of bar I will say is what? Something that you create and then you make hefker. And then you make hefker. But I will say if you don't make it hefker, then what? It's not bar. If that's the case, then this can't be a case of bar. To which the Gemara says, you're right. You're right. Scratch that. The olam ki da'amar me'ikara. So I will say ultimately again, let's go back to I will say our original interpretation. What was our original interpretation? The original interpretation is Reuven is chayiv whether his body causes damage to Shimon or ultimately again his property causes damage to Shimon. Shimon will be chayiv if his body does damage to Levi, but not if his property does damage to Levi. Why? Because what could Shimon say? I didn't create this bar. Why should I have liability for this bar? So I'll say, but what was our problem? Well, why did we scrap that? Why did we scrap that interpretation? Why? Because I will say, we had a second line in the Brisa. What did the second line in the Brisa say? Second line said, Kulan chayovin al miske gufan u'pitur miske mamonon. Because the end of the Brisa read, all of them sounds like Reuven and Shimon, are chayiv for damage done by their body, but are not chayiv for damage done by their property. That's so. We didn't know what to do with that phrase. So the Gemara says, "Kashlan kulan chayavin tirgim aravad debar miyumi kameid ravina shehusku kelim bekelim." Oh, interesting. So we'll say, what's the case over here? The way to set it up, as we'll say, is that ultimately, again, we're talking about a case of not a bodily damage, but rather, again, where let's say the utensils of Reuven ended up causing damage to the utensils of Shimon. Right? The utensils of Shimon ended up causing damage to the utensils of Reuven. So we'll say, so in that case, ultimately again, what's the halacha? We'll say, so now, this is not a case of Adam Hamazik, but rather it's a case of Bar Hamazik. So the case over here is somehow Reuven's utensils, take a look at... Okay, fine. We'll just say it outside. So we'll say so. Let me say again. We thought we were talking about a case of bodily damage, right? One body inflicting damage upon another body. It turns out that's not the case. Reuven trips, and what happens? Reuven's utensils ultimately cause the breakage of Shimon's utensils, and Shimon's utensils end up causing the breakage of Levi's utensils. So we'll say, when it's utensils causing damage, we'll say, what is that? What is that? That's bar. So really, this is all a case of bar. So in a case of bar, I'll say, what's the halacha? Remember, we've seen this quoted many times, though we haven't learned sugi of bar yet. We've seen this many, which is that bar, I'll say, you're only chayiv for adam and behema. You're chayiv for damages done to a person, damages done to livestock. What are you not chayiv for? Kalim. You're not chayiv for utensils. We'll say it's just special gzeres hakasa kalim. So as I trip, my utensils fall into someone's bar and break. There's no liability for that. Why? We have to see. So the Gemara says, listen to this. Therefore, if that's the case, then the Brisa makes sense. Then what the Brisa was saying was the only time Reuven will be chayiv for Shimon is in a case of where? Is if somehow Reuven's utensils cause damage to Shimon's body, his person. But if they cause damage to Shimon's utensils, then ultimately it's a case of bar. Bar is not chayiv for utensils. Same thing with Shimon to Levi. Amar Mar. So we'll say now. We'll say so fine. So we'll say so now we have finally understood the case, the pile-up case. So in the pile-up case, so we'll say. So remember, what we have going for us over here is that halacha l'maisa. We've now just essentially what we've done is we took what we thought was a very expansive case and we just made it very narrow. So essentially, it's a case of bar. So in the pile-up case of bar, you're only chayiv ultimately again for adam, not chayiv for kalim. Let's finish off. Amar Mar. Imachmas rishon nafla rishon chayiv b'neskei kol. And I will say, and I remember again, what did the Mishnah say? The way the Mishnah ended off is if it's clear that the entire pile-up is caused because of number one, then number one is chayiv for all the damages, all the subsequent damages. So let's analyze this. So the Gemara says, good. Machmas rishon heichi nafla. What's the case? Now I will say, so in this case over here, what we're saying is like this. There's Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. So again, normally what we said is Reuven trips and falls down, Shimon falls over Reuven, right? And Levi falls over Shimon. So what we were saying before is Reuven's going to be chayiv for Shimon, Shimon's going to be chayiv for Levi, and the list keeps going. However, the Gemara says, if it's clear that everyone is falling because of Reuven, then Reuven is chayiv for all of them. What's the case where it's clear that Reuven is chayiv for all of them? So watch this. The Gemara says, Papa Amar de Pascha la'archei kishalda, where Reuven is strewn across the road like a carcass. Rav Zvid Amar kichutra de siyumta, like a blind man's walking stick. So essentially, what's the case? The case is where Reuven essentially is sprawled out across the width of the path. So in that case, I will say what you could have is multiple people simultaneously tripping over Reuven. By the way, no one even stops to ask how Reuven is doing, right? And all of this, right? So I will say, so that would be the case. That would be the case where again, it's obvious. In that case, everyone is falling because of Reuven. So you could have multiple damaged parties, but all of them are falling as a result of Reuven. In that case, halacha l'maisa, and Reuven will be liable for everyone. I will say, let's just tie this up halacha l'maisa, because this is a really interesting case. Here we go. Good. Let's start. Okay. All right. Let's go. Ready? Let's do this. Okay, Rambam. Hilchos Niskei Mammon. I should have really sent this out to you on the chat, but then you would check your email as well, so I'm not going to do that. All right, Hilchos Niskei Mammon. All right, Parak Yud Gimel. Listen to this. Shnei Kadarim. Shnei Kadarim Shalom Halkim B'Zerach Zeh Achar Zeh. So we start out. Let's just go through the cases. Two guys, Reuven and Shimon, both potters carrying their stuff. V'niskal Rishon v'nafal v'niskal Hashem b'Rishon. Reuven trips, Shimon trips over Reuven. Good. Im hayel Rishon. So here we go. Im hayel Rishon la'amod v'lo amad chayev harishon b'niskei sheni afa pishu anus b'shas nefila eino anus b'yusamuta b'derech v'hari yachol la'amod. So I will say here it is. First of all, just a backdrop to all of this. We paskin like the Rabbanan and not like the Rabbanan. This is very important, brother. There's still Baba Common notebooks if anyone wants. These are Yisodos to make sure you're keeping track of. We paskin like the Rabbanos, like the Rabbanan, right? Niskal eno poshea. It is not negligent to trip. It is not negligent to trip. Again, it could be shogi, it could be onis, depending on the situation. So I will say, so therefore again, Reuven's walking, he trips, he falls down, Shimon trips and falls on top of him. What's the halacha? So I will say, so the Rambam says, it depends. It depends. So first of all, number one, the act of tripping is not negligent. If Reuven had the ability to get back up, and he didn't do so, and then Shimon fell over him, then Reuven is going to be liable. However, says the Rambam, but if Reuven didn't have the ability to get back up, and Shimon went ahead and tripped over him, then in that case again Reuven would be pater. So we'll say that's how you pass halacha l'maisa. So number one, niskal is not poshea. Number two, if you fall down, like we said, halachically and ashkafically, there is no liability for falling down. There is liability, however, for what? Not getting back up. So if you had the opportunity to get back up, Reuven, and you didn't do so, and Shimon trips over you, then you'll be chayiv. But if for argument's sake you didn't have the ability to get back up, then enachinami again, and Shimon falls over you, you would not be liable. Next, I will say, okay? So we'll say, let's go with the case. Now, I'm sorry. Good. Good. Fine. So we'll say, so now listen to this. Fine. So I'll say, so now, all right, one more piece. In this case, this is actually an incredible line. So let's say this case, right? Reuven falls, and now again, let's say he doesn't have enough time to get back up. He's not able to get back up. So Shimon trips over him. What's the halacha? Pater. Now, what about the fact? Okay, you couldn't get back up, but what could you have done? Warn him. Look at what the Ram says. V'im lo haya lo la'amod pater, v'afa pishalo hisir lazeshen iskabo. Now, I will say, if you didn't have the chance to get up, right, you're still pater, even though you didn't call out a warning. Why? Mipneshu tarud linafsho. Because I will say, if Reuven fell down, right, it's tremendous. Right? I will say, if having like a bad fall, like it's pretty overwhelming. It's also in Rishus Harabim. We don't fault Reuven for not calling out to someone else, right? Why? Because Reuven is a little bit preoccupied with what's going on with him, and therefore perhaps he didn't have the presence of mind to call out to Shimon. So bottom line, we don't really take into account this calling out. Rather, what it comes down to is, do you have the ability to get up or not? That's really what it comes down to. If you have the ability to get up and you don't, there's liability. You don't have the ability to get up, ultimately no liability. Okay, get ready. You thought we were done. Listen to this. We'll say now, the shaila is, let's go with the case where Reuven fell down, had the ability to get back up, but didn't. Now Shimon falls over him, and what? There's liability. What's the shaila? What kind of liability are we talking about? I will say, when we speak about liability, what kind of liability is there? Reuven only has liability for damage done to Shimon's body, right? But not for damage done to what? Shimon's property. Why not? Because Reuven and his stuff, I will say, what are they? They're a bar. When Shimon is damaged through Reuven's bar, and therefore, again, that liability only extends to personal damages, does not extend to damage to property. Incredible. All right, we'll say one last piece. Here we go. This is all. This is halachas ches, tes, and yud. Here we go. Last case is the pile up. So now watch this. Pile-up case. So now, pile-up case, we're going to say, first version of the pile-up case is, everyone had the ability to get up, but they didn't do so. Right? Because we'll say, obviously, as we established before, if you fall down and you can't help, I've fallen down and I can't get up. Right? So we'll say, so what's the halacha? No liability in that case. Right? Because remember again, we paskin, niskal is not poshea. You're not negligent when you fall. So therefore, when you fall down again, it's ones. If you can't get back up, it's still ones. So there's no liability in that situation. So I was saying the pile-up case has to be a situation where you fell down, you could get back up, but you didn't. So now what's the halacha? Harishon chay beniske gufo shel sheni ben shehuzak begufo shel rishon hamutal ba'aretz ben shehuzak b'maso. So we'll say Ruvain ultimately again we'll say is going to be chayiv for damages done to Shimon, right? But I will say what kind of damages? Only bodily damages, not damage to property. But Ruvain is going to be chayiv ultimately again through damage to Shimon, whether Ruvain's person or property damaged Shimon. Okay, now watch this. Vasheni chayiv beniske gufo shel shlishi im huzak begufo shel sheni, aval im huzak b'maso shel sheni shenafa pater. I will say, but watch this. Shimon, when he damages Levi, is only going to be chayiv if Levi gets damaged through the person of Shimon by tripping on his body. But if Levi trips on the package of Shimon, then what? Shimon will be pater. Why? Shahari omer lo hasheni barzeh shumasai ein hani hakora oso. I did not create this bar. She'arishon hipel hasheni maso v'mesiru zeh kulan peturin. But Allah Chalamayse, if they warned each other, ultimately again, then all of them will be pater. So I will say, the Rambam does throw in warning over here. So what warning does do is, warning does absolve from liability. It's actually interesting. So I will say, so if we kind of pull this all together, here's what we have. Number one, niskal eno poshea. Tripping, there's no liability. If you trip, you fall down and someone else trips over you and gets damaged, so I will say, what's the halacha? It depends. What does it depend on? Did you have the ability to get back up or not? If you had the ability to get back up but you didn't, you are chayiv. Technically speaking, how could you absolve yourself of liability if you could have gotten back up? By calling out the warning. But if you didn't get back up and didn't call out a warning, there's liability. If you could not get back up, then what? Then you are pater. Even in cases where there is liability. What is your liability capped at? Liability is only capped at, or is capped at, personal damages. But damages to property, ultimately, again, you will not be responsible for. Why? Because I'm about to say all of this represents bar damages. And bar damages don't exist by property. Incredible, Abba says. So now we've seen the sugya, both halacha l'maisa, hashkafa l'maisa. What a day! What a day! We'll say shkayach. We'll stop here. We'll start at Mishnah Meretz Hashem tomorrow. Tremendous shkayach. All right, we'll say Chevron Zoom. Have a great day, everyone.